Now day 4 of David's, spelled d4vd, preliminary hearing has come to an end, and the focus shifted to one of the most important pieces of evidence in the entire case, Celeste Rivas Hernandez autopsy. Dr. Grant Ho, the deputy medical examiner who performed the examination, testified as the court turned directly to how 14-year-old Celeste died. But the most surprising moment came when David's defense began questioning Dr. Grant Ho, the medical examiner who performed Celeste's autopsy. During cross-examination, the defense raised a possibility that Celeste may have been holding the object that caused the penetrating wounds. In other words, the defense was testing whether those injuries could have been self-inflicted, although Dr. Ho did not conclude that happened. And somehow that was not even the most disturbing testimony heard in court. Detective Corey Farrell also testified about alleged private messages, images, and details involving David and Celeste that have never ever been laid out this clearly before. Now I'm not going to talk about that here because that in itself needs its own video, and that's the video that I'll drop right after this one. But for this video, we're staying focused on the autopsy, what the medical examiner could actually establish about Celeste's death, and the questions David's defense raised about how those injuries may have occurred. Unlike investigators, prosecutors, or defense attorneys, the medical examiner is not there to build a theory around the case. His role is to explain what Celeste's remains revealed, what could be medically established and what could not. The autopsy findings had already determined that Celeste died from multiple penetrating injuries caused by one or more objects, and that her death was ruled a homicide. The report documented 2 separate wounds to her torso. One penetrated her liver, while the other was located on the lower side of her chest. It also showed just how difficult the examination was. Celeste's remains were already in an advanced state of decomposition, and several parts of her body had been dismembered before she was discovered inside the front trunk of the Tesla registered to David. So after 3 days focused heavily on the vehicle, the inflatable pool, DNA testing, and other physical evidence, Day 4 brought the court directly to the medical findings surrounding Celeste's death, and in a case filled with allegations, competing arguments, and questions about what the evidence actually proves, the medical examiner's testimony gave the court one of its clearest looks at the death itself. So earlier in the day, the court heard from Dr. Grant Ho, the Los Angeles County Deputy Medical Examiner who performed Celeste Rivas Hernandez autopsy, and almost immediately, he made one major limitation clear. Because Celeste's remains were already so badly decomposed, he could not determine exactly when she died. Dr. Ho said that the most he could determine was that she had been dead for at least a matter of weeks. When prosecutors asked whether it could have been months, he agreed that was also possible. That limitation matters because prosecutors alleged that Celeste was killed at David's Hollywood Hills home after arriving there on April 23, 2025. Her remains were not discovered inside the front trunk of that Tesla registered to him until September 8, nearly 5 months later, and 1 day after she would have turned 15 years old. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman, one of the prosecutors handling the case, directly asked Dr. Ho whether Celeste ever reached her 15th birthday. He answered no. Dr. Ho then explained that decomposition had created numerous defects across Celeste's skin, meaning not every mark could automatically be classified as an injury she suffered while alive. But 2 wounds stood out because they were connected to the damage inside her body. One penetrating wound entered through her abdomen, passed through her diaphragm, and penetrated her liver. A second penetrating wound on the left side of her chest extended at least 2 inches into the chest cavity, entered near the lung, and damaged an adjacent rib. Dr. Ho testified that the wounds were penetrating sharp force injuries, and that each was independently life-threatening. The liver wound could have caused catastrophic internal bleeding. The chest wound could have impaired her breathing by allowing air into the chest cavity or by damaging the lung. When prosecutors then asked how quickly someone with those injuries could die without medical treatment, Dr. Ho testified that death could have occurred within minutes, although he acknowledged that she could potentially have survived for hours. Based on the multiple penetrating injuries and the overall circumstances of the case, including the dismemberment and concealment of her body, Dr. Ho classified the manner of death as homicide. He explained that homicide is the medical examiner's manner of death classification for a death caused by another person. But that classification did not identify who caused the injuries, establish that David was responsible, or reveal the exact circumstances of Celeste's death. And that is where David's defense began pushing back. Defense attorney Marilyn Bednarski asked whether Dr. Ho could determine who had been holding the sharp object that caused the penetrating wounds. Dr. Ho said he could not. She then asked whether he could rule out the possibility that Celeste had been holding it herself. In other words, The defense was suggesting that the wounds on Celeste's body, the same wounds the medical examiner said caused her death, could have been self-inflicted. Medical examiner Dr. Ho explained that when they suspect someone may have caused their own sharp force injuries, they often look for what are called hesitation marks. Those are smaller, more superficial cuts near the deeper wound, which can suggest that a person hesitated before causing the fatal injury. But in Celeste's case, none were found. Dr. Ho also acknowledged that the autopsy could not reconstruct exactly how the wounds happened. He could not determine Celeste's exact body position, whether she was moving toward the object, how quickly her body may have been moving at the moment of contact, which wound came first, or how much time passed between them. So the defense was not proving that Celeste injured herself. They were pointing out that although Dr. Ho, the medical examiner, classified the death as a homicide, the autopsy could not show exactly who was holding the object or precisely how the fatal wounds were caused. From there, Dr. Ho, the medical examiner, described the condition of Celeste's remains and what the autopsy showed about the dismemberment. He testified that each arm had been separated in one place, while each leg had been cut in two places, once around the upper thigh and again below the knee. The cuts were also made at slightly different heights on the two legs. Prosecutors asked whether that could mean the legs were cut one at a time, rather than with one straight cut across both of them. Dr. Ho said that was possible. He explained that the cuts went through bone and the exposed surfaces appeared smooth. A knife or scalpel can cut through skin and other soft tissue, but cutting through dense bone would generally require some type of powered saw. Prosecutors then asked whether the cuts could be consistent with a power saw, including a chainsaw. Dr. Ho said they could be, but he could not determine exactly what tool had been used. He also could not determine whether the dismemberment happened before or after Celeste died. Dr. Ho also testified that Celeste's left ring finger and left pinky finger had been removed. Earlier evidence indicated that one of those fingers had carried a red tattoo that read David. The cuts around the finger also appeared clean and smooth, and Dr. Ho said they were consistent with a sharp tool, such as a knife or saw. Investigators also found tiny blue fragments embedded in several of the cut areas. Dr. Ho could not identify the material because the pieces were so small, so they were collected and sent to criminalists for further examination. Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman, one of the prosecutors in the case, then asked the medical examiner Dr. Ho to consider a hypothetical scenario. She asked whether the fragments could be consistent with Celeste's body being placed inside a blue inflatable pool and then dismembered with a chainsaw. The defense then objected, arguing that the question was speculative because Dr. Ho did not know where the blue fragments had come from. And then the judge, Charlene Olmedo, allowed him to answer. Dr. Ho said that was actually possible. But that answer did not prove that either the pool or a chainsaw had been used. It only meant that the scenario prosecutors described was medically possible. Prosecutors could then compare that testimony with the separate evidence concerning the damaged pool, the blue fragments, and the saws purchased in the case. The testimony then turned to toxicology and whether drugs or alcohol may have contributed to Celeste's death. Because decomposition had left no blood available for testing, the medical examiner's office tested tissue from her liver instead. Dr. Ho said the initial screening showed possible signs of benzodiazepines and methamphetamine, but additional testing did not confirm the benzodiazepine result, and the methamphetamine result remained inconclusive. Now, a very small amount of ethanol was also detected, but Dr. Ho explained that alcohol can sometimes be produced as a body decomposes, meaning the result did not necessarily show that Celeste had consumed alcohol before her death. During cross-examination, defense attorney Marilyn Bednarski asked whether decomposition could make toxicology testing less reliable. Dr. Ho said it potentially could. She also asked whether the results supported an overdose as the cause of death. Dr. Ho said they did not. And then the defense then asked whether information about someone's life could help medical examiners consider other possible explanations for a death that could include a history of drug use, suicidal behavior, mental health struggles, or violence. And the medical examiner, Dr. Ho, agreed that this type of background information could potentially be useful. He also acknowledged that he had not spoken directly with Celeste's family before the medical examiner's office classified her death as a homicide. Now, the defense appeared to be emphasizing the information Dr. Ho did not have when he reached his conclusion, but nothing found during the toxicology testing established an overdose or provided another medical cause of Celeste's death. And then the defense continued questioning Dr. Ho about what decomposition prevented him from determining. He said he could not measure the liver wound's full original depth because the organ had softened and shrunk after her death. He also could not determine whether the wound had cut through a major artery or whether the bleeding had mainly occurred inside or outside the body. Because of the condition of Celeste's remains, Dr. Ho also could not determine whether there had been signs of a struggle before her death. The defense then questioned him about damage found on one of her ribs. Dr. Ho acknowledged that one damaged area could resemble the type of defect caused by a gunshot, but he could not conclude that Celeste had been shot. No bullet or other projectile was recovered, and there was no additional physical evidence establishing a gunshot wound. So basically, the fact that Celeste's body had been decomposing for so long put the medical examiner at a major disadvantage. Even though these are trained professionals, there's only so much they can determine when a body is in that kind of condition. Dr. Ho, the medical examiner, could still identify the injuries and explain how severe they were, but he could not construct every detail of how they happened. And that is exactly where David's defense started poking holes. They focused on every gap the autopsy could not fill. Who may have been holding the object that caused the wounds? Whether there had been a struggle, and whether Celeste could have been holding it herself. They did not, however, prove that Celeste injured herself, but they were trying to create doubt around the parts of the story the medical examiner could no longer answer with certainty. But Dr. Ho's conclusion stayed the same. Celeste died from multiple penetrating injuries, and her death was classified as a homicide. And that is where the medical evidence stood at the end of day 4. In the next video, I'll be covering the testimony from Detective Corey Farrell, including the private messages, photos, and other evidence prosecutors say documented David's relationship with Celeste. Guys, drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new here, and please let me know in the comments what stood out to you the most as far as the autopsy and everything we talked about in this video from day 4. If you guys have any questions, if I can clarify anything that you did not understand, please put it in the comments, and I will do my best to get back to you guys. I love you guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace, I'm out.